All right, welcome to the next episode of Every Citizen Armed. Today we're going to have kind of a fun event. We're going to have Tony Mosley and his wife Dawn, who own Professional Firearms Training LLC. Online, you're going to find it as Mosley Tactical. They are one of the instructors that are on our site, calconcealed.com. You'll see that on there. He's been a lot of things in his life. He is a Marine. He was a retired BPD officer where he had a lot of different jobs, whether working with DARE, he was a detective, he worked a little bit with the SWAT teams, he was a tactical officer. I think that's just a great story. And now he's teaching out at the ROC and teaching a law enforcement class. So with him teaching, his wife is a college professor, there's a lot going on between these two. And I think they really shared some great insights. I think you're really going to enjoy it. I did. We had a lot of different conversations that went on. And we talked about some personal beliefs also, which we seem to share a little more on that. So I hope you really enjoy this. With that, let's get going.
Every Citizen Armed ensures that every American patriot is prepped with knowledge, perspective, and firepower.
He counted on America to be passive. He counted wrong.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
All right, welcome to the next episode of Every Citizen Armed. Today, we are joined by Tony and Dawn Mosley. Now, this is going to be a pretty fun conversation. Tony's got a great story. I think they both have a great story, really. And I really look forward to getting it out to you guys, and you guys listen to it. Tony, why don't we start? We'll do a little bit of, your history. We've talked a little bit about it. You're a Marine, you're, BPD officer for many years. Now you're teaching the kids, but kind of start at the beginning. Give us a little bit of your history, and then Dawn, actually, a little bit of yours down the road when you're ready.
Certainly. So I started to tell you my age and that I like long walks on the beach with my wife, and when she kisses me with her whole body. Anyway, so what I wanted to tell you is I was in the Marine Corps. I joined the Marine Corps 1979 through 84.
Now, how old were you when you joined?
I was 18 years old.
Okay.
18 years old. And like many of my current students, real quick side segue, I always wanted to be a Marine, always wanted to join the Marine Corps, but then turned 18 and got scared.
Yes.
And because life was getting real. And fortunately for me, my favorite uncle, who's since deceased and lived here in Bakersfield, I'd come down to visit him, and he, as a veteran, had a conversation with him, and he said in no uncertain terms that I should really go. And that was really the words I needed to hear at that time. And so it made the decision pretty easy.
So 84 to 91?
I'm sorry, 79.
I'm sorry,
79 to 84.
79 to 84. Okay, very good. And where did you go? You got to go see some places then.
Yes, I did. So initially when I went in the Marine Corps, I was a reservist, and that meant that basically you had to go in the military for 6 months before they sent you home. So I went to basic training boot camp in San Diego, California. And then I went to my school in Millington, Tennessee. I was in aviation, a helicopter mechanic. And so when I came home, I had a good relationship with my recruiters. And so in short order, after being in the reserves, probably 4 or 5 months, I realized that wasn't what I was looking for in the military. And so I talked to my recruiters, and they said, well, you know what? We're going to make you an EAD, Extended Active Duty recruiter's aide. So I said, okay. And they paid me. I was getting regular pay. And I was on recruiting. I was an E2, E3.
Okay.
Recruiting. And I put a few of my friends in the Marine Corps through that process. And after that ran out, we decided that we're going to go in the regular Marine Corps. And back then it was very easy. In fact, I remember doing my own package, my own enlistment package. And he signed it and checked it, and I immediately got orders to Hawaii. And so I was stationed at Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii from 1980 until 1983.
Okay, that's better than Tennessee.
Yes, very, very much. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you. I was in Alameda, California at the time. NAS, Naval Air Station Alameda. That was my original duty station.
I'd still take Hawaii over that.
As would I. So then we in Hawaii, and it was peacetime. We did several deployments out of Hawaii to the Western Pacific and Indian Ocean. The way it worked, it was a rotation, and there were 3 units that did what we did. 3 at the time, CH-46 helicopter squadrons, and the way it worked, one was on station in the Western Pacific and the other 2 were gearing up. One would come back and then another one go. Even though I was stationed in Hawaii for 3 years, I was actually on board ship for 18 months of that.
Oh, okay.
Fast forward to my last year in the Marine Corps, and I was deciding on what I was going to do, and I got orders to Cherry Point, North Carolina. And at first, I refused the orders, and then the more I thought about it, I thought, well, you know what? Here I am in Hawaii, been away from what we call CONUS, Continental United States, for a while, and plus the trade school I was leaning towards going to was on the East Coast. It made sense to take the orders, set myself up in North Carolina, and then ultimately transfer into civilian life and end up in New York for the trade school I went to.
And one of the things about being a Marine compared to other services, every Marine is a rifleman.
That's correct.
So that actually kind of led you right into, kind of prepared you for what you're doing, with your instructions that you're doing now, I would think.
Very much so.
A little bit of an introduction right there to firearms. Mm-hmm. And so then coming out of that, you went to the trade school.
A little place called City Island, New York. I was a licensed commercial diver. And so we did that work for about a year and a half, on and off. The problem, if you want to call it a problem, great job, it's construction, which means you are either working or you're not. And so you have to go where the jobs are. And so we worked a couple of little jobs out of Utah. There was a company out of Utah I worked for, and we went to Wyoming. There's a lot of landlocked diving.
You might have skipped over something here, because I just realized you looked over at Dawn for an answer. So how long have you guys been married? Well, because evidently she was there.
Oh, well, she wasn't, but she knows the story.
Oh, okay. All right.
And so the short answer to your question there is 34 years this past November 10th. For those of you who don't know, that's a Marine Corps birthday.
Oh, is that right? Now, was that intentional?
Yeah, absolutely.
Very good.
Absolutely.
Once a Marine, always a Marine.
Had to choose a day I couldn't mess up. Couldn't remember.
So then did you do any diving when you were in the Marines? I mean, is that what brought you to that?
So I did diving in Hawaii,
okay,
which kind of led into I thought, man, well, how can I earn money doing this? Of course, I'm in Hawaii. Didn't think about diving in black water, which a lot of commercial diving is. But got a job. Where was that job? It's in London Bridge in Lake Havasu. Yeah, we went down there and dove for a couple 4 or 5 months on a project. And so it was really good work when you were working.
Sure.
But as a young man, what I learned from the Marine Corps and from my life is young people need to be working all the time. We don't need to be working and then off and then working and then off and then working, in my view. No, I think you're right on, actually. As we get older, we've realized that was 100%.
That off time is a good time to get in trouble or spend a lot of money.
Spend a lot, either or. Choose a team.
I'd rather go make money than just go to work. So you did that for a few years?
Yes.
Okay. Well, how does that lead you to coming back to Bakersfield and joining the BPD? Because that's quite the stretch.
So back to that favorite uncle, he had 2 sons. He had 4 children, my cousins. And just, again, if you look at this from a helicopter perspective, you can see it. Both my cousins one was a Bakersfield Police Department detective, and the other one worked for the Sheriff's Department.
You were destined.
And therefore, when I came back to Bakersfield and was working a little job, and I had really not thought in terms of going to work in law enforcement, but both these guys, people whom I looked up to and still do, just left one of their houses a little while ago. They were making, they seemed to like the work. They said, it was good careers for them. And so I started to kind of explore it and basically fell into it because at the time, the police department was hiring. And so I remember taking, at the time, I took a physical agility, a written test, and a written psychological in the same day. We started at noon and we finished at about 10 or 11 o'clock that night. And I came away from that going, you know what? These people really want to hire people, They
needed some help, evidently.
Well, apparently so. And so we got involved in that and went to the police academy. And I remember people always asking, do you like it? Do you like it? Well, when you're in the police academy, you don't really know that you like it. Keep in mind, had come from the Marine Corps, so it wasn't difficult. Probably if there was anything difficult, it was the academics for me. But we were able to navigate that and then got hired and go, figured I had a little bit of an aptitude for it. So it naturally fit.
And what did you say, 27 years?
officially 24 years, 6 months, but there's a little hiccup. There's a thing there where we left town, joined another police department, and then ultimately came back.
Okay, I got
So
you.
I say 25.
Okay.
If there was a fact checker out there, because I'm running for office, they would they would say 24 years, 6 months.
Okay, well, that's pretty long career there. Mm-hmm. And what kind of things did you do with the department?
Oh boy, you want to know all of this, don't you? So,
like I said, I think you have a great story. Like I said, when we started talking, the stuff you've done, I think you should be very, very proud of all the things you've done.
Well, I'm most proud, and this is not just because she's here, but just because she is here, I'm going to say this. I'm most proud of this lovely woman who puts up with me on the daily and the 2 children that she has given me.
We're generally not that easy to deal with, so
Not at
I
all.
understand it.
Not
I've
at
been
all.
married for coming up on 35,
Not
so
at all.
yes.
And so every day I hit the floor and I say, thank you, Jesus, for another day. Don't let me mess this one up.
Absolutely.
Mouth, shut your mouth, do what you're told, and then move forward. Anyway, so as far as by way of a resume, I went to work in patrol. Everyone does at the time, and I think everyone still does at the Bakersfield Police Department. You work patrol. Early on in the 80s, there was a big problem with rock cocaine in the areas in which we worked in the centralized Bakersfield area. And so I got tapped or asked to be on this street narcotics enforcement team. And we did a lot of good work. We arrested a lot of people, and at the time, people actually went to jail for narcotics offenses, and they did time. I know this is all sounding probably like a foreign film to some people.
Yeah. It doesn't happen now.
Because I can tell you, we did a lot of good work, and we if you want to say, assisted in cleaning up a large portion of the then street narcotics at that time. So we worked street narcotics. Came out of that detail, went back to patrol, did that for another year or two, and then went back to the street narcotics team. And I remember I did two rotations. And
In Dare?
no, in street narcotics.
Okay.
And wanted to tried to do a third, and then I remember having a conversation with then an assistant chief, and he wisely said, "No, you can't keep working narcotics. You need to do something else." And so I got asked to teach DARE, the Drug Abuse Resistance Education
Absolutely.
Program.
Very familiar with it.
And actually, again, I didn't know it. Again, you look at this stuff from, again, looking down on it. It was a good move because it helped me become more proficient at teaching and dealing with young people, et cetera, which is what we're doing now. Fast forward, I worked traffic, ultimately got promoted to senior patrol officer and was a field training officer, and went to work then in the training division where we did training for the entire department, and backgrounds. That was another big part of that detail, and I really enjoyed doing backgrounds on people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, basically, when you were an FTO, and how long did you do that?
I did that probably 2 years. Most assignments I worked at, I noticed a pattern, 2 or 3 years, and I would like to move.
So in that, you're going to bring a lot of new officers in. They're coming out of the academy. That might be the first time they've been exposed to firearms.
Typically, for a large number of people, yes.
So I would imagine, in my mind, that would be pretty intimidating for them. But that's got to be a little intimidating for you. And what does that look like when you're getting these young officers in who really don't understand it?
So I'm often asked, and we'll fast forward to this past weekend, I went on getting involved in this competition shooting. And I really, I'm not a person that likes to lose, but
There's nothing wrong with that.
I'm telling you right now, that's a whole different game. And I'm getting humbled by the people I'm shooting with in all areas. And it's so I'm saying, golly, man, and these guys are, cops can't shoot. And whether we can or can't, I'm a fairly good shot, but this is a different game. It's a different game, that competition shooting.
Oh, absolutely. I went to my first one a while back.
And how'd you do?
Oh, no, I didn't do it. So here's the problem. And this is where Naomi Moss comes in, who was a guest multiple times ago. Naomi's a great gal. Naomi is costing me a bunch of money right now because she got my wife involved in competition shooting. So now,
Get your checkbook, sir. Get your
exactly,
checkbook.
that credit card is burning up, and now she's got to get a new gun. She's got to get this. She's got to get that. I'm like, wait a minute. I see what she did here. So yes, but it is a very different aspect of that. So that's probably where you're seeing these young folks probably could have.
Oh man. So the good thing, and if I'm going to date myself a little bit, but we have then and now excellent firearms instructors at the Bakersfield Police Department.
Yeah.
Excellent. And because we do pride ourselves then and now on learning and learning how to utilize these tools, I hazard a guess when cops get hurt, and pay attention to this, typically in this community, and we've had cops shot, but rarely does it end with a cop shooting and that being the end of for the cop. For the officer.
Yeah, exactly.
Rarely does it end that way. Right. And I say that because of the training that's instilled in the academy, not through the FTOs per se, but through the training division and the firearms training unit, because they do a phenomenal job. They do a phenomenal job of preparing these kids to go and hit the streets.
I would imagine the FTO, they're getting all their basic training on the hand, how to do it, what to do, and you're going to bring them in there and teach them when.
Exactly. And run scenarios in your head and talk about officer safety is huge and paramount in terms of knocking on doors and going into people's homes and what you're looking for to remain safe. The idea is, again, people don't like to talk about it, but the number one job of a police officer is to go home at night.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I can't think of the last time, and I'm sure it's happened. I can't think of the last time a BPD officer was shot. I know we did lose. Yeah, exactly. I know. Knock on wood. I know we did lose Campos. I think it was out. Sheriff out in Wasco or Shafter.
Philip Campos.
Yeah,
I knew him.
exactly. And that was very sad. But I have not heard of anything. And I'm sure that's because of your guys' training.
I would put it up against. I can't speak to nationally what they do in different places, but we do a phenomenal job, and I know because. Based on the evidence, based on nobody getting shot.
Right. Yeah. Well, when my son went through the academy for the sheriff's department, and there was a joint academy, BPD and sheriff, if I remember right. Mm-hmm. One of the things is he actually lived with us at the time. I remember him coming home, and they would just beat the snot out of him, and he would show up, and now in his mind he had went through basic, right? Into the and his. That academy was 10 times harder than basic training in his mind. He said it was very different. He had, but I watched him get in the best shape of his life. I watched him. I mean, he was already comfortable with firearms, but he got more and more comfortable. And it was a little humbling, which was very good for him too.
Well, but it's always good to get humbled.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's what's happening to me right now with this competition madness.
One of the things you brought up earlier, the DARE program, mm-hmm. We don't have a lot of these programs any longer.
No.
When you did that, and it was because in my previous life, I used to own a grocery store.
Okay.
And in that, we used to have what we'd call the DARE fairs and things at our store. And we would do fingerprinting. And so we'd have the DARE officers come down. Okay. This was down in Upland, California, down by Rancho Cucamonga.
Okay.
I always thought that was a great program. From the outside looking in, it was a great program. Was it a great program from the inside looking out?
Yes. I absolutely agree and support it then and now. I believe it has gone the way of decisions and funding.
I think you're absolutely right, because I was told the funding was struck. It was pulled from it.
And so, because at that time, there was a significant amount of street drug use, like now. And so the idea, if you think about a comprehensive approach, well, you gotta have an enforcement arm. But you also have to have an education arm. And I believe the DEA calls it demand reduction. If you reduce the demand of those people coming up, then in theory, you have less knuckleheads that you're chasing that are utilizing these substances. It made sense. And so that's why, from a narcotics standpoint, I went, hey, we can, we're going to arrest people. That's what we're going to do. Part of the issue, I think now too, and I'm jumping around, is that because we're not enforcing any real time and allowing people to actually dry out and not utilize drugs, and we're writing tickets and letting people, they're out before the ink's dry on the report, then what are we doing? We're just, it's a revolving door. And as you look at our streets, and I'm going to get heated here, thank you for this, we have a problem that we're not solving. We have a problem that we're not solving.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We live in Northeast Bakersfield, and I can tell you, up until 2 or 3 years ago, I had never seen a human being walking on 178. You see that regularly.
Oh, it's all the time now.
And I'm thinking, what is going on here? What's the deal?
You know,
Why?
it's interesting. That ties back to our last episode with Brian Miller, actually. And he, being he was in the CO for a long time in the CDC, and then he was a parole agent. And he felt that in the prison systems, they've taken out a lot of the drug. It's all about rehabilitation now. There's not a lot of punishment. A lot of the drug, classes and things that were going to help those guys are gone. So really, we're not helping anybody.
So what are we doing? We're housing people, and we're making them. Again, I've never worked in custody, but I've been to a few prisons to ensure people stay there. Yeah. And what are we doing? We're housing, and we're making better criminals.
Well, very much, and just letting them out now. Now we're just letting them all out,
and then they're letting them out with little to no skills.
Yep.
And so I don't know about you guys, but whenever you shop or go to the grocery store or go to the get gas like we did the other night, you got people hanging around that you're going, what's going on here? Why don't you have someplace to be?
Yeah, every time. You can't go anywhere right now, and that's. I think you're in that. If we're not going to have someplace to put these folks, it's hurting society all the way around. And it has to make the job harder for the cop on the street.
Oh, 100%.
I can't imagine. I look at what the COs have to go through, talking with him and talking with family that are in that, and talking with law enforcement now, what they have to go through out on the street. It's got to be a little, I'll call it frustrating, demoralizing, take your pick. There's a lot of aspects there. So compared to when you were on the streets, and what time frame was this back?
Back from the mid 80s to the mid 90s.
Okay. At a very different time compared to what we're dealing with.
Oh my
now.
gosh, night and day.
Now, back then, were you coming across a lot of private citizens carrying firearms?
That's a great question. Personally, you would, working the areas that we worked, there's of course gang members and those kind of folks that were armed. But as far as legally, private citizens carrying citizens, not that many. I remember a few, but typically, again, this is going to be controversial. Typically, what I've seen is those private citizens who are armed are not being a problem for law enforcement.
No, if you're going to go buy legally, you're not causing trouble generally.
You're going to avoid the madness.
Right. Well, it just seems like in the past 10 years, especially, and this is just an outsider looking in a way, but it seems like the legal carrying has went up considerably in the past 10 to 15 years.
And keep in mind, I retired in 2000, giving up my age without giving up my age. I retired in 2011 and been in this business now 7 or 8 years, maybe, as far as the
doing
instruction part. And yes, I would tend to agree with you.
Yeah, and I think that's a great thing, in my opinion.
Oh,
I want to see more and more. And in all honesty, I carried a firearm before I was legal to carry a firearm.
You were as we call rolling dirty.
Absolutely. Well, it was funny. And my son used to give me a hard time about it all the time. And I make controversial comments all the time, but at the same time, I used to say, okay, they're not going to pull over a 45-year-old white guy and ask for a gun.
I don't know that you're wrong.
In all reality, I looked at it that way. I mean, they're not going to look for my gun. Yeah, and I know, that you always get in trouble for saying that, but it was just a reality. And I wasn't out committing crimes.
Well,
but,
that we know of.
Right, exactly, except for that one. There was one time I did get pulled over, and it was in the console, and he asked for my all my information, get my license, get registration. I started reaching. I'm like, oh no, it's over here. Never mind.
Yeah, don't look here. Don't look over here.
Yeah, look exactly. I'm like, and I thought, okay, I got to fix this, and I did. And I did. It was like, you got to do it right.
Now, I got a question for you.
Sure.
Was your son your guy? Was
my
Chuck
initial instructor?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, no, I tell you about not my initial instructor. Actually, it was, he works for the Sheriff's Department. What's his name?
Oh, Randy Myers.
Randy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Randy. I went through their class out there.
At Shafter.
Out there in Shafter. Great class. Really enjoyed it. Him and his partner, Juan. Randy and Juan, they put on a great class. We had a good time.
I know him, but I've seen a picture of him. I don't think.
Oh, he's not? Okay, well, never mind. Well, Randy.
Okay.
Yeah, I went through that many years ago, and then he's done it, and then now I have to get it done again. So it's got to get redoed.
Keep me in mind.
Oh, no, we're going to talk after this. We will be talking after this. So, yeah, absolutely. So in that, so now you're coming out of law enforcement.
Yes.
And then for some reason you decide to get into teaching.
Well, I really, that's another long, drawn-out story. If you want to hear it, I'll give it to you. But
well, I look at two things. You had your Marine career.
Uh-huh.
You know that was awesome. I think that's great. Then you go into law enforcement, another service.
Yes.
Now you're going into a whole nother service area, and you're going to really work. You went from you were helping kids in DARE.
Yes.
You were taking some of the bad guys off the street.
Yes.
In that, you're helping a lot of folks. Now you're going into teaching. To me, another great career. You're really working with some great kids. And, we talked a little bit beforehand. You said you knew of me from different things. I've known of you for a long time.
Okay.
Your name has popped up a lot over the years.
Okay, hopefully in a good light.
Well, but most of them. No, actually, every bit of it. And that's why I really wanted to get you on, because I think you've done some really great things, and the stuff you're doing there for community, to me, is very important. So you're working with all these young kids now. You said you've been teaching 7-8 years.
Actually, more than that. It's 10.
10 now?
Yeah, we started in 14.
Oh, wow. Okay, so yeah, it's been 10 years then. So what are you teaching?
So I teach. I am the law enforcement instructor at the Regional Occupational Center.
Okay.
So there's, real quick to plug that, the ROC and then CTE programs. We teach, I have two classes, a morning class and an afternoon class. And there's a night class, not taught by me, but taught by another instructor. And then Liz Madden teaches out at CTEC. She has a law enforcement class that she has a morning and afternoon class. And so where I'm giving you these 5 periods, I believe, somebody's going to fact check me on this, I believe we're the only program that has 150 kids in one program. Law enforcement.
All law enforcement
Yes.
programs. I think that's awesome.
It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. I got a visit, sorry to jump in, but I got a visit from a former student rather, last week. He just happened to be working patrol. He's the sheriff's deputy. Clayton Ramos. He pulls in and he's wearing his greens, and first I'm looking at him like I wasn't expecting him, because I didn't know the kid. I hadn't seen him in several years. He was one of my kids from back in 2018.
Well, it's out of place now.
Yeah, and it's out of context. And I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, wait a minute, is that? And he comes in, hey, Mr. Mosley, how are you? And I go, hey, how long you been working for the Sheriff's Department? I've been here about a year. And anyway, so those kinds of contacts, again, you're planting seeds.
Absolutely.
You're planting seeds to grow trees, to create shade that we will never potentially set in.
Absolutely. But that's
the job. And
but you're creating something for the future.
Yes.
And I look at that. That doesn't get highlighted enough.
Well,
in my thoughts. So I didn't even realize we had a law enforcement class out there. So I think that should be talked about a little bit more. How do kids get into that?
So it's for juniors and seniors only.
Okay.
And as an elective, when the students, first of all, they will only accept you. Let me back it up. It's not a scared straight program. It's not a program by which a parent, and we get this from time to time, want their kids to get involved in it to help straighten them out in some kind of a way. It's for good kids who are interested in law enforcement, mm-hmm. or good kids who think that they're interested in law enforcement. I always tell people or ask people a question, or I'll ask it of you. Chuck, did you know what you wanted to do when you were a junior or senior in high school?
I'm one of the few that probably did. Okay. But yeah, but obviously that has changed, and it's always going to change.
And there it is. And most of us, I didn't know. I knew I wanted to be a Marine, but
Right.
beyond that, I didn't know
Yeah.
what I wanted to do to earn real money. And so I use that and say, look, if you don't know, maybe, just maybe, you put your toe in the water and you find out about something that you don't know about, and maybe it creates within you a little bit of a fire, a little bit of a spark. And then that spark can then, we fan it and turn it into a flame. And so that's what we're trying to do with our program in law enforcement. And there wasn't a program before I got there. And so we kind of have built it, if you will. And it is built into what I just shared with you, the 5 different, the multiple classes. And I'm very proud of that.
Well, I think having 150 kids in it, that's very impressive. They have to be accepted into the program.
I'm sorry, yes. They go to their counselor, and if they're good kids and have, good attendance and decent grades and are eligible to take the course or courses at ROC, because the way it works real quick, again, I have morning and afternoon class. The morning kids get on their homeschool bus and then come to the ROC where they spend the morning with me, 7:30 to 9:30. We start at a regular time, unlike most schools.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a whole nother conversation. I cannot believe we have to wait till, what is it, 9 o'clock?
9:30. I'm like, what are we doing? Anyway.
Yes.
And then they spend 3 hours with me 5 days a week. Then those students get on the bus, and then they go back to their respective home schools. Sure. And the afternoon does the opposite. The afternoon kids go to their home schools for the first 2 to 3 periods, then get on a bus for the ROC program, spend the afternoon with me. And then they get back on the bus and go home. So it's it's termed law enforcement because it's not just a class. It's not just me lecturing about, laws and codes and those kinds of things. We do that, but we run it like a mini, I didn't tell you this, but I was also an academy instructor at the time, part-time doing the physical training. Your dad said, I'm sorry, you lost a couple of pounds in the deal, by the way. Good on you. I'm not judging. Anyway, you had Edmund. Oh yeah. He's about 6'9". He's a good guy. He played basketball at CSUB, I think.
Nothing wrong with that. Let's get him in good shape.
We run the academy like a mini police academy for kids. We do some form of physical exercise every day, whether it be physical training or defensive tactics. And we put them through the paces in that if they were going to go ultimately to work somewhere in law enforcement, this would be their first look at what it might be like. And so do I yell and scream? I try not to. But it's one of those things.
Been around a lot of teenagers. Sometimes it's pretty easy to yell and scream.
I tell them all the time, this is just the bass in my voice so that you hear me for the 4th time.
Yes. I'm changing my tone. That's what I'm not yelling. I'm just changing my tone. I think my son might have heard that a few times growing up.
But they seem, let's put it this way, early on when we just started August and we're almost at the break, the Christmas break. Early on, within the first week or 2, kids know if they're going to want to do this or if they're not.
Yes.
And if they don't, that's fine. We have them potentially, leave and hopefully find another program, because here's the thing. There are several other programs that might be more suitable for them.
Well, Kern High has a lot of options. That is something, and a lot of folks don't know about Kern High School District. They're the largest high school district in the state of California. There's probably close to 40,000 kids now in that district.
Yes.
And I think we're at 21 campuses, something like that. So there's a lot of kids on there.
There's a lot of kids and a lot of kids that will be graduating, hitting the workforce in May and June, and we always talk about that. But anyway, go ahead.
No, if you could help them get them ready, I think that and actually, I'm going to come back to something. You're teaching this class now.
Yes.
You taught at the academy.
Yes.
You have a field training officer. Yes. I had Dan Camarillo on here a while back. He's a world-renowned jiu-jitsu.
Oh, okay.
I felt, and I talked to Donnie Youngblood about this a little bit too, about putting something like jiu-jitsu in these classes. I think it would be great for the guys on the street. More hands-on.
They are going, or maybe even have gone to Gracie.
Yeah, that's who trained Dan.
Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
And that's become a big part of a lot of not only academies but law enforcement training. Again, a lot of fights end up on the ground, and so though there's a lot of crossover in terms of that contact sport that relates to controlling somebody and taking them into custody. And that's the part I think that sometimes we get wrong. We got to control people before we get them into custody. It's not just about socking them in the head. It's about controlling them and using the least amount of force necessary to effect the arrest and overcome resistance. And sometimes we fail in that regard.
Well, I think it puts another tool on their tool belt regardless.
100%.
So you're not reaching for the firearm.
For the firearm or the stick or the taser or whatever it is you happen to have.
Yeah, exactly. I just think that I've always felt that's something that should be more involved in the training. So with that, so now you've come through that. Now you're teaching these kids. And now we'll get into one of the things that we kind of brought you to my attention. I'm not going to say first because I actually knew you were teaching at RLC before I knew you were actually teaching the CCW classes.
Gotcha.
But so that's different folks. They were like I said when I had the feed store and so forth. I kind of heard about you. But with that, tell me about your classes that you do teach. As far as firearms training. And how
okay.
What got you into doing that?
Well, it's funny, not funny in that I'd been taking people shooting long before I became a licensed instructor. And so I've always enjoyed shooting, whether it be, I did start in the Marine Corps. Actually started before that. I still have it, little Harrington H&R 22, Harrington and Richardson 22, that I used to go and shoot in San Jose, shoot squirrels with my buddies. And anyway, I knew when I was toward the end as a detective at the police department that I was going to do something with firearms. And so I would take, and at my own expense, which you do that all the time is in law enforcement, taking some courses, basically train the trainer type courses.
Sure. And,
rifle, pistol, shotgun, taking all these different courses from various people. And with the idea of getting these certifications, with the idea of, I'm going to do something. I'm not sure what. And then I called the sheriff's department. I probably shouldn't mention his name, but he was in an academy that I had trained people. He was the sergeant running the CCW unit at the time. Okay. And I talked to him and I said, "Hey, how do you get on the list to become?" It was just a cold call. Yeah, I didn't know. And he says, "Well, you gotta do several things. You need a business name, and you need this, and you need all these things." And so we ran around. And it was right at the time when they were about to close the year. In other words, you had to get your paperwork in by a certain time. Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to...
Yeah, closing that fiscal year.
Yes. Yep. And so we ran around, did everything, got a bank account, did this stuff, blah, blah. And within the next day or two, I created this packet of information like we still need do to this date, sent it in. And a few days later, he calls me and he says, "So how do you want your name to appear on the website?" And I went, "Huh?"
And when was it? How long ago was this?
That was 7 or 8 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've been doing that. Okay.
Yeah. And so we've been doing it since then. And what I was hoping to do, more tactical training, more, that kind of stuff, specifically pistol, rifle, shotgun. But in my view, I think people want the training, but I don't think people want to pay for it.
Oh no, you're absolutely right. We're all a bunch of cheap suckers.
Yeah, and so what has happened with my business, there's probably 90% CCW training. I do a fair amount of pistol base. I have a course for all those disciplines: rifle, pistol, shotgun, a basic, an intermediate, and advanced. That's what I call it. I don't advertise those on my site simply because it's such a rarity. But what ends up happening with some of my CCW clients is they'll say, "Hey, do you offer another course?" I go, "Yeah. You want to take it?" I'm not cheap. And then we discuss it and we move forward in that regard. But those courses are available.
And your company is?
Professional Firearms Training, LLC.
You gotta get that name out there. Well, I think that's something people need to realize. You've had a lot of extra training. So you could relay that to other folks?
Well, that's where the dare and the teaching now and the patience come in when you're dealing with folks, because everybody learns differently.
Absolutely.
You learn that, and so you're able to, deal with this young lady here perhaps differently than you would your son, because he's hard-headed.
I've never noticed that about my son at all. Yeah, that's
Casual observation.
Yeah, exactly. but that's exactly. I think that's perfect, because you definitely have to tune your training and your teaching to hit that right personality.
100%. It's not about to me what you know as much as it is getting what you know into that other person.
Right. Yeah, and where they can relate it out to what they're going to do.
And then having them demonstrate through whether it be drills or repetition or whatever it is that they've got it. It's no different than, as a father teaching your kid how to ride a bike. You got to teach them, and you got to stay after it. Otherwise, it goes away. Perishable skill.
A perishable skill, and that's something that we talk about quite a bit, because a lot of folks will go out and get their CCW. Mm-hmm. And then they might go shoot again 2 years later, because it's time to go renew.
So,
and you've got, it's a perishable skill. How often do you tell in your class, John Doe comes in, he gets his class, he's done his training. Now,
funny. I have these things that I tell people. One of them is, so if you're shot with a guy, I'm going to shoot with a guy this afternoon. He's a initial 16-hour. Thank you, Governor Newsom.
Oh yes,
we could have a whole nother show.
Oh, we're going to talk about that one in a little bit too.
He's an initial CCW client of mine. I'm going to tell him, just like I'm going to tell the listeners, one of the things I will say is, in 2 years, when you go to renew, first of all, I'd like for you to stay with me, but you can go with whoever you want to. I'd like for you to stay with me. But the wrong answer to the question is last year with you. The question is, or and 2 years ago with you. The question is, when's the last time you shot? And if they answer the wrong answer 2 years ago with me, I give them the look.
Oh, absolutely.
What?
And we're all guilty of it.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
Price of ammo has made it very hard for some folks to get out there. They're afraid to get out. I can't waste the ammo, especially with the extra tax that our glorious governor has tacked onto that for some odd reason. Yeah, exactly. The shortage during COVID, take your pick. There's a lot of different excuses, but there's also a lot of dry fire training and so forth that they could get out there and do, or do like a lot of the folks sneak over to Arizona or Nevada and stock up a little bit and bring it back. Don't have to pay that extra 11% that the state still doesn't know what to do with.
Do people do that?
Oh, I've never heard of it. No, wouldn't think of it.
Wow, that's a good idea.
But there is a big Pass Pro shop in Nevada, so right off the 15. So when I look at that, I try and recommend folks get out there at least once a month.
At minimums. And if you're not shooting, you hit it a moment ago when you said dry practice. Take your tool, your firearm, and I learned from a guy who says it this way, again, somebody's going to get mad. You ritualize your dry practice. You say to yourself, I'm going to dry practice for 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever it is. I'm going to unload my gun. I'm going to put the bullets in the coffee canner on this table. I'm going to go into this room, and I'm going to dry practice with an empty magazine and do that. And you're going to do that for, pick a number. I don't care. 5, 10, 15 minutes, 20 draw strokes, whatever it is you're doing. And then you go back in the room and you reload your magazine, and you're done doing that, because if you don't, your gun's going to load itself and you're going to put a hole somewhere.
Right. Yes, that's responsible gun ownership. We talk about it often.
And so it's common sense and courtesy. That's all this is. Common sense and courtesy. And common sense is not very common.
Unfortunately, yeah, it's waning a lot. So how many classes do you think you're doing? You're pretty busy.
I'm fairly busy. I do my classes a little differently than other people, in that it doesn't bother me at all to shoot with 1 or 2 or 3 people. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me at all. In fact, I would rather sometimes do it with that way, because it's way safer.
Now, where do you do most of your training at?
Well, I have a place, a spot, an undescript location.
Okay, perfect. Yep.
Out.
Actually, I think I know where it's at.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. So that's a great spot. That's a great spot. This episode today is brought to you by Branded Feed and Farm Supply over at 4328 Rosedale Highway. They're a locally owned business. This is where you can get your dog food, your horse feed, your chicken feed, pretty much anything you're going to need for your animals. But at the same time, you can go in there and get all kinds of knowledge. Seth and the gang, they really know what they're talking about. They're very helpful. And really, in going in there, you're supporting a local business. These folks have done a great job over the years. I've worked with them. I've had a great time. They're a lot of fun. And like I said, you can learn a lot just by going in there. Ask the questions. So appreciate it. Support them. They're helping support us. We want to move them forward in this also. Thank you. Branded Feed and Farm Supply. Be sure to support the local business. Now, I'm going to go over to Dawn for a minute here. I mean, you've been brought in here.
Okay.
Now, you guys were married 34 years. Were you raised around firearms?
Yes.
Okay, so you were very comfortable coming in.
Yes, I was actually. Can I say this?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
That's the beauty of a podcast. You can say whatever you want as long as it doesn't upset him too much.
The first time we went out shooting together, I outshot him. So, but that's
not uncommon.
That was actually before he was on the department. So,
Oh, is that right? I'll be darned.
So,
My wife shoots definitely better than I do.
Okay.
When I went out shooting with Naomi, she didn't ask me to come shoot with her and join her team. But she asked my wife. Yeah. Now, the one thing that she did great for me while we were shooting, she says, because I was carrying a shield, and she says, I think you need a different gun.
That's what Naomi told you?
Yeah. I said, can you say that a little louder? My wife's deaf in one ear. Say that a little louder. So she did. So she's like, yeah, you need to go get like a Glock, 19 or something like that, a little bigger for your bigger hands. I don't have big hands, but I have big. She's
bigger
like,
than that.
Yeah. She's like, you need a little bigger than that one. So I told my wife, I said, the instructor told me I have to get a new gun.
I gotta do what she tells me.
I gotta do it. So obviously you're a pretty good shot then.
Very good shot.
Yeah.
yeah.
Very good.
I can hold my own.
You can hold your own. Now, do you go out and do tactical training with him?
Actually, I prefer going out with Naomi. Simply, I think there's a dynamic as far as, husband wife. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I would strongly, I recommend all the time, don't ever have your husband teach you to do anything.
It changes the dynamic. So we do go out and shoot together, but yeah.
Well, and I hear that on a lot of different, from a lot of folks. And whenever we're talking about it, I always say, you should never have your husband teach you.
I talk about it, I call it, I've deemed it what I call the coaching theory, and that's, I would imagine there's somewhere in psychology or some manual somewhere, and it goes like this, in my view. It goes, you have a child, you're coaching your child at a sport, whatever that sport may be, and the child is not hearing you. But some other person, can be anybody, can be another parent, can be another passerby, can be whomever, comes up and tells the child, hey, why don't you try this? The child then does what that person says, and miraculously, the child goes, Dad, you see what I did? And in your mind, you're going, I've been telling you that same crap for the last 10 years.
All the time.
And so it's I don't know what it's called, but I know it works. And
I think we get tone deaf to each other's voice.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But like with the kids all the time, it was like, how come my son would go over there and work his butt off for the neighbor and do everything? And your kid's great. He's doing this. I can't get him to mow the dang lawn. But he's willing to go do all that stuff for you.
Tie his shoes. He won't tie his shoes.
So you've been shooting. So you're obviously a concealed carry person also then. And you're very comfortable with that then. Now, you just went through the courses recently, right?
I did. Yeah.
How was that? Was it intimidating with the new course? The 16-hour course?
No.
I did the 8 hour.
I did the 8.
Because renewal is 8 hours. That's
right. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it? It's a little bit different than it was. A lot of expansion.
Yes.
in there.
Yes. There's some opinion in there. So
yeah, there might be a little bit of opinion in there, and that's maybe he's guiding it a little bit.
There we go. Yeah.
Because did you do it online?
I did.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's. I think that makes it a little easier for some folks, but I know you got it.
I personally, and I know people that obviously feel opposite of what I'm about to say. I think it's more convenient for people. I think it's more people can start and stop at their leisure.
Yeah.
Obviously, people are busy, and so that allows for all of that. There are some schools of thought that say you miss so much when you're not in a classroom setting, getting questions answered by other people. There's that, but I think the trade-off in terms of convenience and in terms of consistency of the course, I think it fares better.
Yeah.
Personally.
Right. That's what works.
Mm-hmm.
And if it makes it to where more people could go through the courses, I think it's even better.
100%.
And you still have to go out and do live fire.
Absolutely.
And do your training that way.
And that's where we spend not a fair amount of time, but again, I shot 2 clients this morning, and we were done, and they only each had one had 2 guns, one had another. We were done in 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's an easy thing to do, and of course, what we try to do in that regard is we try to do a little bit more, under promise, over deliver, so that people are getting a little something, more to it. But
I'm glad you guys are both here on this because you're both teachers. Now, if you're uncomfortable answering this, absolutely. But I'm going to ask, what do you think about teachers carrying firearms at schools if they're trained and they're licensed?
I think it's definitely something that should be on the table.
And what would it take to get to that point to where you think a teacher should be allowed? And I'll tell you this coming from both my daughters were teachers at one time.
Uh-huh.
And since they both since got out of teaching, so I had strong opinions of it. But there's a lot of times I don't know. You don't know what you don't know. So in my opinion, teachers should be able to carry if they're trained, they're licensed. But that gun can be taken away by a student.
Exactly. Exactly.
But what should we train as far as that goes? What would it take to get to that point? And what are the pros and the cons?
Biggest concern I've got is not specifically related to teachers carrying. It's anyone carrying who has not been practicing. That is the biggest concern that I see. Even to my own, if I am not practicing, I'm not comfortable carrying. I don't want the gun to be a potential threat to me because I'm not proficient. So to get to your question, there would need to be some way of figuring out proficiency.
Would you be in favor of, so I mean, we have certain requirements for John Doe that has to go through it. But say if a teacher wants to do it, add some qualifications on top of that. They have to be certified every 3 months instead of every 2 years.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
I think that would be, in my thought process on that, like I said, outsider looking in at a lot of these things, you gotta qualify before the school year begins. You gotta qualify again. You could pick some dates, fine. This time of year, at every quarter. They run on quarters. Anyway, so would that get you to where you think you might be more comfortable?
I haven't thought about it.
Well, that's the beauty of a podcast. We get to talk about different things.
May
What
I?
are your thoughts now?
So first and foremost, I am against teachers being mandated to carry a firearm. Teachers, by their nature, are nurturing and are there to help. And not all, but most teachers that I know, and I know a fair amount of them, are clients of mine, but so are a fair amount of pastors.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I say that because one of the things we talk about when we're at the range is this. Hopefully you'll never have to use your tool to defend yourself or defend somebody else. Hopefully you'll never have to. But we have to understand that potential exists. If I were giving a course to teachers, the first thing I would tell them is that whatever grade you're teaching, think in terms of you having to put bullets into one of your students. Because the reality is that one of those students could be a school shooter.
Right.
And if that caused them to get up and leave the room, that's not a bad thing.
No, I think that's actually a great way to lead into that.
And that's how I think about it, because I don't carry a gun to school, obviously, but if I did, that would be the thing that would be in the forefront of my thinking is who am I going to have to drop to make sure that everybody's safe, and that person that I would have to put potentially bullets in is going to be somebody that's a threat. Anyway, having said all that, you hit it best when you said, or my wife did, when she said training. We have to train people. Then we get into that. Cops, law enforcement officers, at least at the Bakersfield Police Department, they are required to shoot quarterly. That's 4 times a year. Now, is that enough?
In my thought process, no, it's not.
Did you see what I'm saying? And so these are armed professionals who carry a gun every day that shoot quarterly. And now we're going to arm teachers who have additional responsibilities in addition to carrying a firearm. 4 times a year, in my opinion, is not enough. And so I say, depending on who writes it, and I'd absolutely sit on this committee, we're probably going to need to shoot at minimums once a month, maybe once every, I say once every 2 months, you got to shoot a lot. You have to become proficient with your tool. You have to know that that under stress, you can perform and make the hit. And if you can't, then maybe this isn't the tool for you to be wielding.
Yeah, because under that stress, your tunnel gets a whole lot smaller. As your stress level goes up, that your tunnel vision just goes and grows. Actually at North High, they actually have a shooting range.
I've heard about that. Is it in the basement somewhere?
Yeah, it's in the basement underneath the ag room. They used to shoot their 22s, and they had archery under. I don't know if it's still there, but you can't get to it.
When you were in school, I'm not dating you. You shared with me earlier. I'm not going to give you that.
No,
did you shoot? Did you shoot?
No,
at that?
No.
Okay.
That was when my father-in-law was there. My father and I went to North High. He was actually the first full graduating class out of North High.
What year?
That would have been 64, I think. Yeah, it might have been 64.
Okay.
Yeah, it's our whole family went through North High basically. My wife, myself, my in-laws, my kids. It's right here in Bakersfield. I think it would be great for the high school district to bring something like that back.
And
phenomenal. You could do the training right there for the teachers that want to do it. I would never be for mandating anybody carry a firearm except for law enforcement.
Okay.
That, and in that, at the same time, and I had a conversation one time with a friend of mine who is very anti-gun. And we were actually traveling on a business trip, and we went into a very, very bad part of town, in this town. And as we got into it, she got more and more nervous. And at one point, as we started to get out of the truck, she looked over at me and she said, "You have your gun with you, right?" And I said, "Yes, I do."
Did you use that as an opportunity to explain?
I said, "Never." I said, "Never infringe on my right to protect you." I said, I will always do my best to take care of you. And that's it. You don't have to. I don't want you to if you don't want to. But never infringe on my right to protect you. And that's why I'm here. It's not just for me. And then it opened up a lot of other conversations because here she was traveling by herself a lot. And in different areas.
This created a new dynamic, a new perspective.
It did, and that's what I always told her. I said, "Have you ever watched when I walk into a room? I don't have any law enforcement training, but at the same time, I'm in bad neighborhoods an awful lot up and down this state or in different areas. Always pay attention to your surroundings.
Pay attention.
Just know what's going on." And we were sitting there at lunch, and I told her, I said, "It doesn't matter what you have. Fine, you don't have a gun. You got to be able. You're gonna have a weapon with you. I don't care if it's that salt and pepper shaker. I don't care if it's that fork in your hand.
Water bottle.
Whatever it is, always be ready. Be aware. Don't be paranoid. Just be aware." That's that. And it was interesting coming from her, and she's a good friend of mine. But, it was definitely an eye-opener for her.
Good.
So in that, I've always wondered about the teacher aspect. And somebody who's involved in it.
Well, and I would hazard a guess that if you ask teachers, you're going to get a different perspective. You're going to get a different perspective from somebody who is in administration, somebody who is in risk management, somebody who is in the classroom. You're going to get a different perspective. But I know this. I know we really, like so many other things, we knee jerk when something happens,
yes.
And we say, "Oh, how about? How come we couldn't? How come we didn't?" And then, true to form, the tragedy doesn't go away, but we have short memories. We'll forget about it, and then we'll forget about what we do to maintain our preparedness and our vigilance. And then we just, oh, okay. And then another one happens. And we do this cyclical thing where you're going, wait a minute. If we do something different, maybe we have a different outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And what happens when you jerk your knee? You're doing anything, you jerk, you overreact. And that's what a lot of times we see, that overreaction.
100%.
And that, I think that harms society in a lot of ways.
In too many ways.
If
Go.
I can chime in,
Please.
The idea of the knee-jerk reaction, what we've got is a situation that doesn't allow Tony to carry on campus. Now, if there was a school shooting, I would hope to God that my child was in his class and he was carrying.
Absolutely.
But the situation we have won't allow that.
I think about that a lot because, like I said, in my daily career, I work with a lot of the ag teachers, the FFA, and so forth around. And a lot of those teachers are out, kind of like Tony is in the ROC. You're out away from the main campuses. You're almost isolated. And I know, like up at North High, where my daughter taught, the AI squad, the quad up there is at the farthest edge. And you could come right on campus pretty easily. I mean, I know. I've done it a lot. So those are the first classes that are going to get touched. So, yeah, why would you not, in my thoughts? But at the same time, yes, you don't mandate it, but mandate a lot of training if you are going to.
If you are. And I didn't tell you this, but I work, fortunately or unfortunately, I was selected to work as a detective, robbery homicide. And I'd say this, not in all cases, but in many cases. We try as best we can to utilize resources to determine who the bad actors are, to determine who the suspects are, to find the person who killed the person. But also, I will also say that it depends on who the victim is, how our response is. So what I'm trying to say to you is, oftentimes, it seems that depending on the victim, that dictates the response. And then when the right person gets hurt, we see a different response.
Yeah. Not always right, but it's so.
And you can argue and say, no. Well,
I think you got a pretty good professional opinion on that one, that you would know more than your education is going to tell us on that one better than anybody else. So, yeah, I think we'll take your word for that one. And it makes sense. I mean, it's not right.
No, it's not right at all.
But it's going to happen.
Yeah. And so I'm certainly not hoping a prominent person gets hurt or what have you. But when that happens, you see a different response.
Absolutely.
And so, sad.
No, I was just, your card. It's not just the prominent lives that matter; it's all lives matter. And
I did that way before there was any controversy about it. And I thought about changing it, and I go, no, that's how I feel. You know? And so, again, that's the beauty of having your own business, is you have the ability to run it how you want.
No, absolutely. That's why we do this. Mm-hmm. That's exactly why. So with that, you're obviously going out, you're training all the time. Yes. You're teaching folks. You brought up a comment earlier about, people, they're always worried about the cost.
Yes.
This is expensive. This is a business. But at the same time, people got to understand you're running a business and you have to be able to pay for what you're doing.
I'm always reminding people, have you bought gas lately?
Exactly.
Have you gone to the grocery store?
Have you paid insurance? Good gosh.
All these things, again, a good attitude, as the old boy said, doesn't feed my belly or shoe my horse. And so we have to be, I think I'm fair with people. I say that loud tongue in cheek because I got a call on the way back from the coast on Saturday from a young man who sent me a bit long text about how they wanted to train with me, and I was in a bad area. So by the time I called him back, he said, "Yeah, I was going to train with you, but I checked with somebody else, and they're cheaper." And I said, "Okay,
yeah, no have problem. A nice day."
It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me a bit. That same favorite uncle I mentioned or referred to, he said it best. He was a barber for 40 years, and he said sometimes the client quits you, sometimes you quit the client. Either way, it's good.
No, absolutely. That's absolutely.
And I've learned from this man, when we had to do a little price increase, I was nervous about it. I was thinking, man, this is going to not be good. But you know what happened? Exactly what you said. which was people that want to train with you, and people who don't.
And quite often, you don't. The ones that don't, that are very, very worried about the price, they're gonna hop around, and that's okay. Go do what you're gonna do. We always say you can't. In my daily job, if we have people that are price shopping on a continuous basis, that's not a long-term customer.
That's not a long-term customer.
No.
You can avoid. You can see that coming,
Yeah.
or once you recognize that, we can lose that number.
I'm going to get a one-time buy, and that's it. And then they're going to start shopping around.
We can lose that number.
Yeah, and that's okay. I'd rather get quality. I think that's going to be the key. Yeah, you might find somebody a little cheaper, but let's be real.
Is it really?
Yeah,
Is it really
in the
after
long run. What's your life really worth? When you break it down for this type of responsibility, I don't mind paying a little more to get better training. I think that's definitely worth it. So if you have somebody new, like this young kid who is calling you, but not so much about the price, but just in general, that there's a lot of folks who don't know how to even get started.
As far as the CCW?
Yeah, I mean, I listened to a call the other day, and it's been a couple of months now, I say. But this kid called my son, and I was listening to him, and he's like, "Yeah, I want to get my CCW. What do I do? How do I get started?" He didn't own a gun. He didn't own anything. It was like, and it was. Listen, having to go through this. So if you got somebody call you, how do you lead them through it?
So your son is wise, and believe it or not, because what he did with me early on is he created a thing, and I don't know what it's called, but he would send those people to me.
Yes.
He would have those people call me. and he doesn't do that anymore. We had a conversation about that because these people, just like you heard, again, the first order of business, you have to own a firearm and it needs to be registered to you. It needs to be a firearm capable of being concealed. Now, what does that mean? Guess what I said. No AR pistols. No, what is it called? Smith & Wesson 500s. You can they are concealable, but in our community with Sheriff Youngblood and his crew do not want you carrying those types of firearms capable of being concealed. Glock, SIG, M&P, whatever it is you own, got to be registered to you. Once you own a firearm that's in your name, you go to the Sheriff's Department website, www.kernsheriff.org, and you find the CCW tab. Here I am teaching people about computers. This is crazy. And you scroll down and you begin the process electronically. Everything is done electronically. There's probably a piece of paper, but not at this stage. You find the application, you fill out the application. I always tell people the application's a verification process. You're telling me your name is Chuck Sears, you live at 123 Main Street. Let me see a driver's license that says Chuck Sears, 123 Main Street. Let me see a utility bill that says Chuck Sears, 123 Main Street. Let me see all of these, the documents they ask for are all on the website. They want to see, again, a utility bill, not a cell phone bill.
Yeah, we had that discussion.
Once you get these documents, then you fill out the application. A couple years ago, the Supreme Court said we no longer are required to have a reason to carry a CCW. So you simply fill out the application. You give them your all of your horsepower, if you will, all the information. This part I always talk to people about because this part there's a little bit oftentimes hiccups with regard to your criminal history. Now, you might have forgotten about going to Las Vegas and getting the DUI. You may have forgotten about it because of your state at that time. Right. But the computer didn't forget. So therefore, we want to search our memory bank and we want to think in terms of any negative contact with law enforcement that we have had, and they'll say, I think it's the last 10 years. You put it down. They want to know traffic tickets. They want to know what this becomes is very simply is you're telling the sheriff or his designee that you are a person of good moral character and that you are asking permission to get a concealed weapons permit. The problem is once you're a liar, that good moral character goes out the window. So we can't do that. You have to know when you got arrested. You have to know when you were in handcuffs.
Do your homework. Do a little bit of research on that. Exactly.
Before you submit. And I've had a friend, believe it or not, gentleman in his 80s, this young lady, my wife next to me, he didn't have a computer. We went to his house and she did this for him in about was it 20, 30 minutes?
Yeah, it doesn't take long.
It doesn't take long at all. Once you hit submit, you're going to get some type of electronic notification from the Sheriff's Department. Thank you. We will be in touch. Here's one that has recently changed. Chuck, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but I shot with a guy in September. I asked him, I said, when did you submit? And he said, earlier this month. And I go, no. When did you submit your paperwork to the Sheriff's Department, in which they responded? And he said, no, earlier this month. And I went, really?
It's moving pretty quickly now.
4 or 5 weeks. And I went, wow, that's pretty good. So we've gone away from, bless your heart, Kern County Sheriff's Department, the 4, 5, 6 month wait to the 4 week wait.
Well,
That's
I've
what
heard
it currently is now.
There might be this little competition going on, from my understanding, between Donnie Youngblood and Mike Boudreau about who can have the most CCWs.
I want to bring up something about that. Let me finish this here.
Yeah, good.
But so once you submit, and you pay your fee at $189 or something like that. Then the Sheriff's Department will respond to you at some point telling you, congratulations, you've met our requirements. Contact one of our approved vendors and take the 16-hour course. That is when you reach out to me, and I will direct you to my site, and you'll we've gone almost exclusively to the online course. Thank you again, Chuck. That allows people to do that course at their leisure. They can start and stop, take the course, and then when they're finished with the course, print the certificate at the end, and let's reach out to me via text or phone call, schedule a range time, bring the certificate that you printed, and I will bring your real certificate, the one that you're going to actually turn in, and we exchange certificates after you shoot, and we go our own happy ways. Everything for me is paid for online, pretty much.
Oh, okay. Perfect. And in that, there's talk of, well, actually, one quick question.
Sure.
With that. You got to own a firearm first.
Yes.
Are there classes out there where somebody wants to go and have numerous different firearms to shoot? And this is something that's come up a few times.
Well,
as an instructor,
yes.
I mean, you generally are going to have an array of handguns anyways. So do you have a class where they could go out and shoot a Glock 19, go out and shoot at 7, go shoot at MMP, go shoot whatever? Do you offer that type of class?
Funny you should ask. Did you see the smile on my
I know.
face?
I don't know if we've realized. I've been married 34 years. Generally, they know better for us what's best.
As much as I resist and think you're wrong, you are not. You're right.
And that's why we're both still married after 34 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So the short answer is I have a course, and I start it this way. Have you in your life, or anybody listening, have you ever received a gift from somebody, and in their mind, the gift was something that they had, whether they spent time selecting it or whatever it is, they give you the gift. In their mind, you can tell they're excited about giving you the gift. And you go, great, I got the shoes or the shirt or the sweater or the hat or whatever it is. But in your mind, you're going, I'm never going to wear this crap. How can I re-gift this today?
Yeah.
It doesn't fit.
Whatever it is. So what I tell people, and I develop this course, I call it a handgun familiarization.
Perfect.
And what it is I will come to we make arrangements and you sign up for the course, I will come to your house. I will bring probably, 8 or 10 guns. And we will sit around and we will talk safety. And then we will talk how the guns function. And we will load and unload the guns using dummy bullets. I'll have you stand up and hold the gun, get your stance and your grip and all that stuff taken care of. And then we will go typically the following day, do this on a Friday. We like to go to people's homes who are good cooks.
Absolutely.
And have dinner. Anyway, and
good to know.
And we then the next day we go out and we shoot those same firearms that you've been manipulating. And during that time, I'm asking you the question: do you like that gun?
Yeah.
What do you like about it? Does it feel good in your hand? Do you like the way that recoil? Does that? And now the person or persons are armed with a little bit of knowledge. So when they go to I'm going to plug these people, Dirty Bird.
Absolutely.
I prefer them. they can then. I've shot a SIG. I like it. I shot a Glock. Not so much. I shot an M&P Shield. And so now they're armed with a little bit of knowledge versus trying on this pair of shoes, buying it, taking it home. Oh, this sucks. Trying on this pair of shoes, this shirt. Oh, it doesn't work. And you can do it your way. You can buy the $500 or $600 or $700 piece of equipment only for it to be the wrong one, and then you buy another one.
I've got a couple guns in the safe that'll probably never be fired again, except for every once in a great while.
Let me know if you want to sell them. I know a guy.
Yeah. Exactly.
But I'm saying this course, I think it's a fair value. It's roughly twice the CCW price.
There you go.
So that gives them an idea. Yeah. And I'm not trying to not. But again, you mentioned a couple of things I wasn't thinking about. The price of ammo, for example, right now is pretty good. But do you remember to whatever election it was?
There was a point it was not.
$50 a bullet, $50 a box of 59 mil. I remember that, and I was thinking, are you kidding me right now?
If you could find it.
If you could find it, yes.
That was one thing I did. I had a friend who was in Arizona and found, over at one of the feed stores over there, 500 round boxes. You don't see those in California. And so no, I think that's an important course. I told you my wife is getting into this competition shooting now, but obviously the gun she has doesn't work for that. So hence we're going to be buying another gun. But in that, we have to find one where she feels comfortable. She has arthritis in her hands.
Okay.
She's got to get where she can eject that magazine faster.
Sure.
And more comfortably. And we're having a hard time with that.
Well, Naomi, she's talking to Naomi. Naomi can help her. I promise you.
Well, we're working on a few different things. So it's one of those things, but you've got to find something that's good for her and that she feels comfortable. It's okay, but it doesn't work for her competition stuff. It's you can't put a big enough magazine.
You need capacity in that.
Really was apparent when she was out there. She was having to change that magazine.
Change magazine multiple times, and everybody else is just running through it. And she's like, "Well, hey," and magazine change. It's a game of seconds.
Yeah,
and it costs you
exactly.
time.
So that's why the more I looked at that, the more I thought that's an important course. And there was a gentleman that taught it years ago. It did a class like that back in Second Amendment a long time ago. And just say we won't go back there.
Notice I didn't mention that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
There's a method to my madness.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And so and we need to talk about that course. So I think that would be great.
Sure.
So in that, there is talk of now we've had an election. Things are changing on January 20th coming up. There was talk of during the campaign that our new president would like to make it to where the CCWs are honored in every state.
I would love that.
Is that a true possibility for somebody who's involved in law enforcement in the past? You're very involved in the teaching. And how in the world are you going to get New York to ever honor, and California's tough enough.
And not to be too controversial, but he wants to make things so that they are state run. Yeah. So would this fly in the face of that?
And that actually was part of the conversation.
So short answer, I think it would be wonderful. Again, if you equate driver's licenses and the privilege of driving, which, as we all know, accidents cause way more death and destruction on the annual than firearms do. And we're supposed to be licensed drivers, and it doesn't matter. We don't have to turn those rights over when we cross state lines. Why wouldn't we be able to have a gun that was good in all 50 states? As a retired police officer, and I just got mine. Not that I'm bragging, but I feel compelled to share this with you. Come on. Down there in red.
Okay. All states CCW.
And so
that's awesome.
I have I'm not going to call it a get out of jail free card. I'm going to call it a CCW. But there are states. I've been to New York. I lived there for a short time. I don't know that I would carry a gun in New York, or if I did, I wouldn't let anybody know.
Yeah, well, I don't want anybody knowing what I'm carrying 90% of the time, anyways.
But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah,
and there are several states like that where you go, wait a minute, you could be. You're again, every citizen armed knows this, and hopefully some of your listeners know this. It's your responsibility to know the laws in which you are traveling, and so. none of this negates or takes away from that. But I'm saying to you that I think it would be a good idea. I don't know how you're going to get all 50 states aligned. I don't know how you're going to get California aligned to accept what potential the incoming President Trump is going to suggest, if he can suggest it. The good part, obviously, is that he's got, the Senate and the House, and that these people will wield a certain amount of power to influence these states. How much power remains to be seen.
Yeah, and Ted, to your point, I think you're absolutely right about the states' rights issues, and it's going to be an interesting conundrum for him right there, because how do you do that? How do you do both? I don't know how you do both, but
I would suggest, and somebody else just mentioned this to me, for those of us who have businesses that are run firearms related, I'm of the opinion that if this were to happen and it cost me money, if it cost me my business, that's a small thing. That's a very small thing compared to the bigger, and I mean this with all sincerity, greater good that it would allow for everybody to carry a firearm should they choose. We live in America, and that means we have freedom of choice. And so that's kind of where I stand on that. I don't know if that makes...
No, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense, really, in my thought process. So I totally agree with you on that one. Well, good deal. And now, name of your company again.
Professional Firearms Training, LLC.
And your website. I'm assuming you have some social media.
I need to talk to somebody about that.
I might know a guy or a gal.
And here's the why. I have a very non-existent social media presence. And the reason for that is, number one, as a retired police officer, I kind of try to keep a low profile on this stuff. Mm-hmm. I obviously have a business and I teach people how to shoot, et cetera. But I don't want to, how to put it? This thing could blow up.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Right.
But remember now, I'm a full-time teacher. And so this is my side gig.
And he promised me from the get-go that he wouldn't do more than what he was enjoying.
Oh, okay.
Then there's that. Make a promise to a woman, keep the promise, always.
Oh. Well, you know who owns Westside Arms? Wesley Morris. Mm-hmm. Do you know what he does for a living?
No.
He's a dean of students at Taft High School.
Is that right?
Yeah. and he owns a gun shop. And he talks about that often, so I don't mind sharing that because he shared it on the air.
Well, it's a balance, and man, you could every time I think about, I need to get an Instagram account or do something like this. Better safer one. Whenever I tell my wife that, oh man, it's slow, I haven't shot with anybody in 2 days, my phone explodes.
Yes. Yeah.
Explodes. Oh, I got to renew. I got this. You're doing a class. Yep. And then I go, wait a minute. Pump the brakes, y'all. I got other things.
Well, that's what one man. Yeah, exactly. Well, you do as my kids say, just get a Facebook page because that's all of us old people, anyways. The young people do. The young folks aren't on Facebook anymore. Evidently, it's all of us old people. We're the only ones looking at that, and so interesting. So okay, so they. So the best way to find you is on the website.
Best way to find me is on the website. My number, 661-912-2912. That rings to my cell phone. If I don't answer, it's because I'm in class. I have these funny little policies in class. I will answer, but if you're talking about, if I will answer my phone while I'm in class, but I will put you on speaker. So that's one of my rules when my students, when their phone rings, they answer it, put it on speaker. And so we have to abide by that same rule. Anyway.
That's a fun one. I like that.
But I don't want your gun business out there to a bunch of kids. So you just know that if I don't answer, I'll call you back.
No, very good. Very good. Anything else you'd like to share on here?
I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you.
Good. Well, we enjoy having you. Like I said from the beginning, I was just impressed with your story, impressed with what you've done, your commitment to service for so many years. I think you're obviously mentoring a lot of young folks, whether you mean to or not. You are. And I think the example you're setting is just golden. I mean, you look at all that years of service, great marriage, all the things that society needs.
No, we're doing our best. We're doing our best. We're grateful to be here. We're grateful to have each other. talk about this daily. We have 2 wonderful children and a grandbaby, 2-year-old, little Luana.
I always say kids are great, but grandkids are awesome.
Oh my gosh!
Yes, all they're cracked up to be.
And so we're in a good. We have health and strength. I mean, we live in the greatest country. People don't acknowledge this, in my view, enough. We live in the greatest country in the world. The people are coming here, and I know we're getting ready to remove some people, and that's going to be probably hard on a lot of folk. But if you go to any place else, there are rules in coming here, and so we have to get that fixed.
We have the most open immigration system that in any country in the world, I believe. Yeah, you look at things, and other than a few out there that are running through a really hard time right now. Yeah, go to Australia, go to Mexico, and try and be an illegal. It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
No,
they want to know you when you're at the airport. Who are you? What do you want to do? How long you're here?
And you will go to jail if you're there. If you overstay your welcome, you're going to jail.
The federales are coming to knock on your door and take you.
Australia's tough. You can't just move to Australia either. I walked. Did you know Craig Davidson? He was an ag teacher up at Highland.
Yes. Yeah, Mr. Davidson. Yeah, he's from Scotland.
He's in Scotland now. He moved back.
Did he really? I thought he got married.
He got married. I mean, his wife was a vet here in town.
Okay.
Good buddy. So he moved back probably 5 years ago or so, 6 years ago. Him and his wife were married for years. Mm-hmm. And he was a Scottish. He had dual citizenship. But for her to go over there was such a pain and so much hassle, even though they were married.
Really?
Oh, gosh. It was so much work for her to even be able to go there and get a job.
And she was from the United States?
Yeah, she's from here. Okay. Yeah, but because she was a vet and wanted to be able to work, she spent a lot of time down in England, in London, trying to get everything done. It was amazing what she had to go through. And people think how easy we make it here. Don't criticize. We make it pretty easy, really. Go marry somebody. You'll be all right.
Yeah. We were just watching that movie.
Exactly. Well, very good. I sure appreciate you guys coming today. This is great.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
I think folks are going to find the stuff that you've done very interesting, but at the same time, very educational.
Well, if anything that I can do, you've got my numbers.
I do. Thank you very much, guys.
You're very welcome.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Best of all, a 5-star review is much appreciated.